And we're live. And we are live here on Monday, which is we're what, May 4th, Jonathan. May 4th.
We are May the 4th be with you. I think is the phrase for today, isn't it?
Well, tomorrow here and in Mexico, it's Cinco de Mayo, Mexican Independence Day. It's a big deal over here, but we're not talking about Mexican independence. Today we are, and welcome to the Dictators, our Monday through Friday live stream with me and Jonathan Fink. Today we are going to, I think, pretty much focus on the latest tragedy out of MAGA and Donald Trump, which is Trump's decision to withdraw 5,000 U.S. troops from Germany. I've got a few clips on that. He actually goes much further than that, but that's where he started. It's a disgrace. So I'm going to just jump right into that, Jonathan.
Yeah, go for it.
Let loose, because it really, really upsets me what he's doing. Pisses me off, makes me very, very angry. As someone who, was part of NATO, meaning as a soldier deployed over there in Germany. Anyway, so what I want to do is, like I said, I've got a few clips here. I'm going to play them right off the top, and then I'm going to make my comments. And then Jonathan, of course, will chime in with his astute vision and information and opinions on this as well. A couple of brief ones. This is when Trump was asked specifically if he's going to be cutting troops in Germany.
Why is the U.S. removing troops from Germany?
We're going to cut way down, and we're cutting a lot further than 5,000. Thank you very much.
Well, that's another thing, and right off the top, Jonathan, and a lot of people didn't catch that unless you're crazy like us who follow the news very, very closely. You didn't catch that Trump and then the Pentagon is saying they are going to cut way past the 5,000 troops that was officially announced. So this is a prelude to something bigger. And the next clip that I'm going to play right now feeds right into that. So it's about 46 seconds long. So just listen to this clip and we'll both comment.
You talked about possibly pulling out some troops out of Germany. Would you be considering the same thing for Spain and Italy? I mean, they haven't been exactly on board.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I probably will. Why should I? Look, why shouldn't I? Italy has not been of any help to us, and Spain has been horrible, absolutely horrible, but we didn't need their help. And to a certain extent, I asked them, I didn't need their help, but I said, yeah, we'd love to have your help, because I wanted to see if they do it. And they, in all cases, they said, we don't want to get involved. And the amazing thing is they use the Strait of Hormuz. We don't use it. We don't need it. We have a lot of oil.
And I just want to add to that. So he talked about redeploying and removing American troops from Spain and Italy. And as you know, your monarch, King Charles, was just here, and he reminded Trump to his face that the only time Article 5 of NATO was enacted was after 9/11, and the U.S. was attacked by terrorists, and NATO did come to our aid, including many Danish. And then he wanted to seize Greenland after that. But King Charles told Trump to his face that, NATO has been there for America and will be there in the future. And of course, it had no effect on Trump. In fact, right after that is when he made this announcement about pulling the troops out of Germany. And then after that, Italy and Spain. So this man knows no shame, and he's obviously a blithering idiot. I'm going to play just two more clips, and then we can both say our piece on what we think about all of this. This next one is, and I mentioned to you, I was stationed in Germany when there was still an East Germany and the Soviet Union, and I became friends with many German people. They're very close friendships. America has been, as Great Britain has too, in Germany since 1945. And so many German families have formed long-term, multi-generational relationships with American soldiers and their families. This is a brief clip about how the Germans are taking this announcement by Donald Trump to withdraw 5,000 U.S. troops from Germany.
This quiet town in Western Germany could soon feel the impact of decisions made far beyond the country's borders. For decades, Landstuhl has lived alongside a major US military presence. With Ramstein Air Base just a few minutes away, that relationship has shaped daily life here since 1945. American businesses, American customers, intertwined into the local economy. But that long-standing connection is now facing uncertainty after the Pentagon said it would pull out 5,000 troops from Germany over the next 6 to 12 months.
It would hit hard because this area is very dependent on it financially, and I think it would cause a great deal of damage.
Across Landstuhl, there's concern about what that could mean. For many here, US personnel are more than just a military presence. They're tenants, customers, part of the community.
They provided jobs, they rented houses and flats. I know from my family that this has also enabled many people to pay off their mortgages.
Ramstein is the largest US airbase in Europe. More than 36,000 American personnel are stationed across Germany, spread across multiple military hubs. Now this planned reduction would bring numbers closer to what they were before Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. It's the clearest sign yet of Washington scaling back its footprint in Europe. And for towns like Landstuhl, the impact could be felt not just on the base, but across the entire community. Axel Zaimovic, Al Jazeera.
And as I said, and I know you're going to echo this, I believe, Jonathan, this is a prelude. These are the beginning actions to Donald Trump totally withdrawing America from NATO. And I have one last brief clip which tells about how legally Donald Trump is not allowed to do that. But as everyone knows, the laws don't apply to Donald Trump. He doesn't.
It's not going to stop him. Yeah.
Not going to stop him. This is what
We're
the
very
deal is.
disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing.
Can Donald Trump actually pull the US out of NATO? Let's check the facts. Thanks to a 2023 law, Trump can't withdraw the US from the alliance on his own. The Senate must vote 2/3 in favor, or a new law must be passed by Congress. That 2023 law came about because of a bill co-sponsored by Marco Rubio, who is now Trump's Secretary of State. And it means even if all Republicans voted with Trump to pull the US out of NATO, they would still need support from some Democrats to pass the legislation. But Trump does have other ways of weakening NATO, which is made up of 32 member countries, including Canada and 30 European countries. He could cut funding and withdraw US troops, essentially defunding the alliance and rendering it ineffective. He could also refuse to help another NATO member if they're attacked. Trump has criticized NATO member countries for not supporting the war in Iran and helping reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He could pull US troops out of member countries that he deems unsupportive and station them in countries he deems more supportive. The Wall Street Journal has reported that's something Trump's team is considering. After a meeting with the NATO Secretary General, Trump posted this on Truth Social. NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again.
Of course, saying that they came to help us after 9/11, of course, doesn't go in his demented, delusional, stupid brain. It just doesn't get through to him because he's a 5-year-old. He's an asshole. I hate him. I'm sorry. Things like this really, really get me. So yeah, he's
a toddler arsonist. I mean, he's going around just literally smashing everything that he cannot control. I mean, it is the behavior of an oversized toddler, and of course he has the diapers to match. But it's extraordinary. Actually, it's not so extraordinary because this is what he always was. What's extraordinary is that he is allowed to get away with it. What's extraordinary is that he is not sectioned, quite literally sectioned and dragged away in a white coat to have his brain prodded. I mean, they can't really prod it because it's probably mostly mush by now. But that's a remarkable thing that you have people kowtowing to him. You have people like Rubio who've done a 360 on everything they once believed. The irony that it was Rubio who passed this, and he is now forcing through a US exit of NATO. And he is trying to use some perverse logic to do it. And there is no logic there. It is simply sycophancy to Trump and his oversized toddler ego. And yet it's not just Rubio. There's a whole segment of people who will agree with it. There's a whole segment of people who will condemn it, but seek to rationalize and normalize it and not call it out for the sheer destructive insanity. But it's not just destruction for the sake of destruction. There is a clear beneficiary to all of this. The beneficiary is Vladimir Putin and Russia. If he wasn't losing so badly in Ukraine, he could capitalize on this much more, it seems to me.
Absolutely. And again, there's been so many articles written recently and appropriately about whether or not Donald Trump is an agent of Russia. And as I've said from the beginning, it really doesn't matter, because you can check all the boxes of what an actual apparatchik, an agent, someone under the control of the Kremlin would do. And Trump checks all those boxes. So whether or not they've got compromise on him, whether or not they're blackmailing him, it just doesn't matter. He's doing all the things that an agent would do. And I don't know if they have anything on him, and I really don't care. He's just he's a traitor. And this, you're right. Who's the biggest winner out of all of this? It's absolutely Vladimir Putin. What Trump has done, along with his sycophant cult members in the United States government, is way beyond the dreams of any KGB member, of any Soviet Union intelligence officer for the last 80 plus years. It's beyond their wildest dreams. And
yes, they have never got a fraction.
No, and they devoted a lot of time and money to this, and he's doing it for free, allegedly.
That's it. And this is the thing, that this is why compromat is dangerous in this respect, because it would almost imply that he knows right from wrong and he's doing things he knows to be wrong because they've got. I don't think that's the case at all. He's doing things because he's easy to manipulate. He's doing these things because he knows everyone's got compromat on him, but that's neither here nor there. He's doing it because he's aligned with the dictators, because he admires dictators,
yes,
because he understands the rules of their game. The rules of their game make sense to him, whereas the rules of democracy don't. And it's now abundantly clear that that's the case. He does not tolerate anyone debating him. He does not tolerate anyone putting alternative point of view to his, if they can make sense of his point of view. He is a dictator, a toddler dictator by his very character, incapable of engaging in dialogue and discussion. He's too intellectually challenged to be able to do that in any case with people who are actual experts. So he surrounds himself with bozos, or with people who might have once had some expertise but very effectively hide it so they can kowtow down to him and say the right things to sort of kiss his butt. This is the remarkable thing, that no one is stopping him. And my question is, well, when do they stop him? Do they stop him when he essentially pulls the US in such a direction that it's no longer functionally in NATO? Do they stop him when he's deconstructed American power in Europe, limiting his ability to project force around the world? Do they stop him when he's crashed the world economy? Do they stop? And the list can go on. Do they stop him when Putin sends masses of drones into Europe, which are dropping on European cities? Does anyone stop him then? Because he won't prevent any of this stuff, and he won't come to the aid of allies, and he'll just keep trashing and trashing and trashing until there is nothing left of the international order. Or the alternative, he pops his clogs sooner rather than later, which is, I mean, that's an outcome we can hope for, I'm afraid to say at this point. But if he dies naturally, I worry that there will not be a reckoning with what he's done or with the people who enabled him, because it seems that there is a tendency, especially in the US, once someone has kicked the bucket, to be compelled to speak well of them, even if they just did a whole series of shitty things in their life, and which is some monstrous pile of shit. Apparently you can't say that when they've died. The truth somehow gets buried with them. But no, we got to call this out. And I think this piece of shit needs to go down for his crimes while he is still alive. Otherwise it'll be difficult.
Unfortunately, I will say what I've been saying for years since he came on the scene, and certainly for the last, I don't know, since the 2020 election, I guess, is that no one's going to stop him. This is a multi-generational issue with America. What he's done and what his cult and sycophants have done is to destroy so many of the basic foundational pillars on which the United States of America has been built on, that if it ever recovers, it's going to be a very long time. And if Donald Trump dropped dead during our broadcast, and I'm not going to say anything more than that, if he did, for argument's sake, nothing's going to change. It may actually get worse, because much as I don't like him, J.D. Vance is far more intelligent than Donald Trump. In fact, pretty much anybody, including my dog and cat, are far more intelligent than Donald Trump, and they do have a plan. You and I talked about the fact that J.D. Vance is a pro-Kremlin guy from way back. He wants us to pull out of NATO. He's one of the biggest cheerleaders for that. He's next in line, literally. If something happened to Donald Trump, he would be the president. And even if he's not the president by way of winning the next election in 2028, whoever they put forward from that destroyed party, which used to be the Republican Party and is just now MAGA, it doesn't matter. They're going to be as bad or worse, because this is a cult, Jonathan. And I know people say that. It's not an overused phrase. It's a fact. It's a cult. They have convinced themselves. Even Marco Rubio, Jonathan, was one of the most anti-Kremlin people in the Congress not too long ago. And look at him. Look at him.
Real hawk, you know.
Oh,
in
my
that respect.
God. He's a whore. They're hypocrites. But I believe in their souls, for just greedy personal reasons, they have convinced themselves that they were wrong before, and Donald Trump is the light. He is the anointed one. I really believe they believe this, and they're going to go down just as the last SS trooper did in Berlin, in the Reichstag, with the last bullet that they have. They're not going to give up, and it's going to be a very, very long, painful slog for us, meaning here in the United States.
This is the key, isn't it? I mean, I was speaking to someone in Germany afterwards earlier who has huge support for Ukraine, and we were talking about that extensive process of denazification and education. Now, Japan went through a lot of reforms. They didn't necessarily come to terms, fully with their behavior in the Second World War, but it's an interesting example of Austria. Austria managed to flip the narrative into being victims and having nothing to do with it, just another innocent victim of it. They didn't go through that process of denazification and re-education. Some individuals may have done that, but it wasn't systemic as part of the education system. And then, unfortunately, you get people with extremely warped views of the past, and an incomplete understanding of what that was. And the example he gave is he was talking to someone who's quite elderly, relaying what he'd found out, and he was quite young, and relaying what he'd found out about the war and the culpability. And she said, yes, I know all this stuff, but of course the Fuhrer didn't know any of this. He didn't know about any of the crimes.
Yeah, just like Putin doesn't know what's going on now.
Exactly. And the same with Trump. The same sort of cultish refusal to believe that everyone could be led by a devil, by a literal demon, down such a dark and destructive path. Somehow, without, I think, really solid educational processes, a lot of people won't want to face the reality of it. Therefore, they will not reform. Therefore, they will remain in that rut of sort of divisive politics where things continue to erode and get broken.
Jonathan, that's what I'm talking about, and I did a podcast and a couple of them on this topic. I think some of them with you, the fact that 54% of American adults read at or below a 6th grade level. That's approximately 11 years old. 54%. And 90% of them are Republicans, registered Republicans who voted for Trump. So it doesn't take, I hate to say it, doesn't take a rocket scientist or somebody with a 7th grade education to know that these people are prime targets for lies, for propaganda, for Trump. And they do believe him. I just read a bunch of comments. I've been doing listening to a lot of videos in preparation for this today about the Trump pulling the 5,000 troops from NATO. So I was listening to Fox News and some conservative, I hate to use that word, but conservative right-wing channels today, and virtually all of the comments were saying, great, we should never have been part of NATO. The day after the war ended in 1945, the last American soldier should have come home. What did we ever get from NATO? Why doesn't Europe defend itself? And on and on and on. Not one had any intellectual capacity to say why we're there, what we've gotten out of this, not just in terms of military, but in terms of trade, in terms of international peace. I'm sorry, morons.
Just the jobs created by
economy.
Having a global network that buys your weapons, oh my goodness, and pays for the bases for you to project global power and protect a trade network that brings vast wealth. I mean, if they don't understand the absolute basis of their economic system, then they're going to come at this nonsense, unfortunately. And that is not just to point the finger and say, look at America, they understand nothing. We voted for Brexit. We voted to dismantle the foundations of our business model, the business model created by Margaret Thatcher, who many of them, espouse as being this dear leader. They took apart her legacy and trampled it, which was the idea that we could become the manufacturing base and the base for projecting, the sale of goods and services into one of the largest markets, and that we could have far more liberalized employment, and we could take advantage of this gigantic captive market by being more agile, being more capitalist. And it worked tremendously well. You then give votes to idiots. You then fail to explain to them why they're shooting themselves in the foot, and you get the kind of trouble that we are in now. And unfortunately, we have a complicit media who has singularly failed to explain, even when the media understands, even when they understand what truth and fiction are, when lies and reality are, they refuse to actually continue to push the hard thing, which is the reality and the truth, and they appease the large segment of people who just want their opinions cosseted and their egos flattered. Well, this is where we are, and unless we return to something like a sort of robust, data-led, science-led, and as you say, high educational level, we're going to continue to wallow in this sort of triviality and let's say the era of the moron, quite frankly.
Well, since we're living in the era of the critically thinking challenged, i.e. MAGA, Trump is always parroting or shouting, as well as all his cult members, about how we cannot let Iran have a nuclear bomb. We can't let anybody else have a nuclear weapon. There's too many. We can't, let nuclear proliferation happen. Well, you know what? If they're demanding that Germany and all of Europe now defend itself 100% and America pulls out, guess what they're doing? Mm-hmm. They are forcing them to develop nuclear weapons, atomic weapons, because they were under the American umbrella. And France ain't going to be able to protect them all. Sorry, they do have nuclear weapons, but not enough. So they talk out of both sides of their you-know-what. They don't even realize, well, if we pull out, they're going to be forced to do that. They're going to be forced to develop their own nuclear weapons. And then what are we going to say? Are we going to bomb them like we are Iran so they don't have an atomic bomb? I mean, of course, they don't think that far because they're just parroting what Trump is saying. But it all comes down to their 6th grade or less education.
This is exactly right. But it also makes them open for manipulation, which I think is a big part here. Because let's go back to Trump's conversation. He is being guided, I believe, in a direction. How conscious he is of that direction, or whether he simply doesn't care, I think will be the open question, far more so than Compromat. But certainly if he is not recognizing in which way his toddler tantrums are driving the world, then there are others around him that do, and there are certainly others on the Russian side that do as well. And I think it's no coincidence that this renewed move to trash NATO comes after an extensive call between Trump and Putin, and then Trump starts repeating sort of ideas that are so at variance with the reality about, Ukraine not having the cards again and all this and that and the other. I certainly think that Putin has developed a format. We don't know how frequently they happen, but a format whereby on the phone he can manage and manipulate Trump and guide him like some kind of lethal weapon.
I agree. As we said, there are people around Trump who do actually have a couple of brains. JD Vance, for example, is Ivy League educated, as are many of them, and they have direct ties to the Kremlin. Whether or not they're getting funded doesn't matter. That's their ideology. And you're right. Trump just had a conversation with Putin. We don't know exactly what was said, but it was right after that he started percolating all these ideas about NATO and some more negative thoughts. Once Mertz made his comments about Iran and how America wasn't exactly handling it very well, that we had no plan. Boom, that was a wide open opportunity for Trump to fulfill his ass kissing to Putin.
Yes.
That's what it was. And I'm sure that's what they discussed among many, many other ass kissing type of things between the two bros. I'm sure, actually, to be honest, Jonathan, Putin gave him a list. He said, Don, this is what I'd like. I'm not pressuring you here. I'm not doing what you did to Zelensky, wink, wink, but here's what I'd like you to do. And if you do, boy, I'd really be appreciative, like a Trump Tower in Moscow type of appreciative. And so I think that's what happened. And here we go with the announcements about Germany, troops being taken out of there, troops being redeployed probably out of Spain and Italy. And I wouldn't be surprised if other countries now are on the list. By the way, Poland and Germany did say, not officially, that they will now consider developing their own atomic weapons because of what's going on. They don't want to. There's so much risk with that for various reasons. They're being forced to do that. So all the MAGA morons who are saying that we're at war with Iran so they don't get an atomic bomb, okay, then pulling out of NATO is going to force more countries in the world to have atomic weapons. So that makes a lot of sense.
It does. We've discussed many times that actually this continuity between Biden's policies and Trump's, in that they supported Ukraine in different ways, i.e. Trump not at all, and in negative ways. Biden obviously supported Ukraine in a rhetorically full fashion and then a logistically muted fashion. But the some result of this is that it pushes Ukraine towards wanting to seek a nuclear weapon.
And there's another one. Yeah, for sure.
The conclusion of everything is that the US cannot be trusted, and that even if it returns to something resembling, what it was before, we now will always fear a reversion to this sort of, not just nasty US, because there's a high degree of nastiness about this, and as you described, the kind of, why were we ever there? And there's just a level of irrationality, nativism, but there's also a sort of resentment that makes it pretty toxic. It seems that beneath the surface, for many people, there is almost like a sort of inverted loathing, which is kind of admiration and loathing at the same time. People, I guess, have a chip on their shoulder. This is one of the arguments. This is maybe the closing one here, because this is the hinterland where propaganda works, and where you even get pro-Ukraine people almost sort of, these arguments bleeding through. And I think we can have a rational argument about what Europe has failed to do, but it's quite clear that Europe is stepping up in quite a significant way and has pretty much replaced the US over more than a year in terms of what it supplied. So the US has dropped out. Europe has filled the gap, which is frankly extraordinary. Now, it may not be enough, and it may not be tied to a clearly articulated strategic plan. Well, none of the allies have articulated a plan, and that includes Trump and includes Biden. No one has articulated a plan except for the Ukrainians. So that's, it's all very well we can throw stones all day long and break the windows in the greenhouse. But the argument that really gets my goat now is that Europe's doing nothing. They need to pull their own weight, blah, 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 blah. And you hear this even from pro-Ukraine Americans, mostly conservative. And you think, do you guys have the gall to say this at this point in time? Now, there are a lot of private Americans who are delivering enormous aid and extraordinary stuff, sometimes individuals who are delivering more than whole countries. So this isn't a pop at individual Americans who are making up for the lack. But just to repeat these lazy narratives that Europe's not doing anything, they need to step up, they need to look after themselves. The reality has changed. And those lines, those arguments are just a pure horseshit propaganda line that add no value to discussion. They just inject arrogance, extraordinary arrogance and entitlement into it, but they add no real value whatsoever in moving us forward. There are lots of issues, but it doesn't help the debate when people come out with this clumsy kind of accusatory language.
Well, I have said for a long time, and you know this, that I was very upset with how slowly Europe had come around after February of 2022. I mean, and so were you. But I also agree with you. And I've made several podcasts over the last, year or more about how fast they're starting to come around. It's not easy when you've been pampered and taken care of for 80 years, especially a Germany who has this huge guilt trip still. Sorry. I don't think if you're German, and I'm not, you could quite understand where they're coming from. And they have come light years. I think they now have the 4th largest defense budget in the world.
Let's not forget they were actively discouraged from taking such an active role for obvious historical reasons. It shouldn't get forgotten.
Well, and they need to move faster. That's not to take away from that. I now believe that Europe gets it. Not all, but Europe gets it for the most part. I'll say one last thing about that, though, because I'm a fan of Ukraine. They need to acknowledge that Ukraine is the leader right now. They do of Europe, in terms not only of defending democracy, of which they are the by and far the leader, but in terms of their military ability, not just having the strongest and most experienced combat hardened military in maybe even the world, but certainly in Europe, but their innovations, their defense industry now, which has come light years since, 2022. They need to acknowledge that not only is Ukraine European, they should be the leader of Europe, which means let them in the EU, stop the foot dragging there. That I'm still pissed off about. I'm sorry. They need to do what they need to do to get Ukraine into the EU. And I'm going to say this, also into NATO. I know they've got problems with corruption. So do we. Oh my God, Trump's our president. So I get it, but they need Ukraine. They need Ukraine. They need Ukraine now, Jonathan, more than Ukraine needs Europe, although Ukraine needs Europe. But for many, many reasons, leadership, military innovation, the defense industry, the defense of democracy, just their morals and their strength, they need Ukraine. So I think bravo to Europe. I think they are now getting it. They're going to do what they need to do. They are saying, U.S., okay, get away. They are now facing the reality of a NATO without American support. They now need to fill that gap with Ukraine.
They do, one in, one out. I mean, that's what it potentially looks like. But actually, Europe will be the huge winner at this point because Ukraine, and this is going to sound sort of to some people like, Ukraine is more adept at defending Europe against this modern warfare than the US is at this point. It has the troops with the experience. It has the willingness. This is the other key thing, the willingness to take extraordinary loss and extraordinary trauma and keep fighting because they have the motivation to do so. But they now also have the technology, the electronic warfare, and the large-scale structures, systems, and training to be able to deploy it. Europe is far better defended by Ukraine than the US at this point in time. And if we acknowledge that, then things become simple simpler and not so scary, but it means fully integrating Ukraine into the European defensive space. It means fortifying our space against Russian informational and political destabilization. It also means merging our joint security airspace, which implies that if Ukraine is preventing Russian drones from hitting Europe, and I think that scenario is almost upon us, then it is incumbent on us to use our air power to defend Ukraine's airspace. This is something we should have done from the very first week.
Yep.
But I think that cannot be kicked down the road any further. And I hope our politicians have they started to get the courage to rearm. Have they got the courage to use those armaments without limitations, excuse me, to defend Europe? That's the big question that is as yet unanswered.
I think all the last, and I'll close on this, Jonathan, all the last administrative and political and military barriers to fully integrating Ukraine into the EU and NATO need to stop right now. Whatever they need to do, and they can do it if they truly want to, and that means closing Ukrainian airspace so to protect against Russian attacks, and it means bringing Ukraine into the European fold, integrating them into the EU, integrating them into NATO, and using all of Ukraine's hard-earned expertise, because they need it. Europe needs it right now. The advent of full-fledged drone attacks on Europe, not just in the East, but anywhere in Europe is upon us, and they need to acknowledge that. I'm talking about NATO and the EU right away. I know you've got to go. I just want to say one last thing before we go. As always, I'd like folks to take a look at my channel and become a subscriber. Need your support, folks. My channel is the No Delusion Zone here on YouTube. Please become a subscriber there. I can use all the help that I can get. I also have a Patreon account. And so if you go there, you'll see my smiling face or smirking, depending on how you look at it. And I would love for you to help me out and be a supporter on Patreon as well. And one last thing, I've also got, like Jonathan does, a Buy Me a Coffee page. You can go and buy me a coffee. I'll drink it and also take the money that you sent me to buy me a coffee. You can become a free trial member. You can support me at $5 a month to start out with, and that again is Buy Me a Coffee. Lastly, put your old phone up to the screen here, or when you go to Buy Me a Coffee at No Delusion Zone or Buy Me a Coffee / No Delusion Zone, and this QR code will allow you to become a supporter of No Delusion Zone. I can use it. Really, really appreciate it. And that's it for me. Jonathan, you have the last word.
Yeah, no, I think we are reaching, in the episode I just put so live on the Silicon Curtain channel, we're reaching a tipping point on many, many levels. Whether our leaders fully wake up or not, there's going to come a crunch point at some point soon. I think in future episodes, we can talk about something else, which I've been saying since 2022. And finally, some analysts are catching up. I saw an article produced on just this subject, which is that Russia's next dictator is not going to be an ultra-nationalist. It is going to be a liberal puppet run by the intelligence services and the oligarchs to try to fool the West yet again into letting them off the hook. So as we approach what is potentially the end of Putin, it may or may not mean the end of the war, but it could also mean another phase of danger where Russia once again slip out of the courtroom of history and once again don't have to pay for their extraordinary criminality. Not the first time that's happened. Something to explore, the downfall of Putin and what comes next in future episodes. For today, thank you to everyone and for our lovely moderators in coming out on a holiday in the UK to help to police the comments and join in with insights.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us today, as Jonathan said. And I believe we're going to be back here at the same time, which is 10 o'clock Eastern time and 3 p.m. UK time tomorrow, as we try to do every weekday. So again, all of you who joined us today, thank you very much. You all take care, stay safe, and stay sane.
Yeah, which is incredible.